Just stick with me. We're gonna get through it together. I fixed the table saw. I can fix anything. So just remain calm. Oh,
I like to build stuff. A lot of crazy stuff. But this is more than just a build video. It's a story about going the distance to achieve a level above mediocrity and the attempt to impress someone who has inspired many. To take you to the beginning, I'm Andrew. I like to build guitars with my buddy Sean in my garage. I also like to spend a majority of my time watching other people build stuff on YouTube. One of the first builders I've ever watched was John Malecki, who I think is probably in the top 5 of the hardest working YouTubers out there. If you don't know who John is, crawl out from under your rock. He's a former NFL player turned woodworker who dabbles in creating some seriously cool stuff. Stuff that's inspired me to work harder, consistently try new things, and push the envelope. Problem for me is, he doesn't even know I exist. And I wanted to change that, so I can make some guitars inspired by his work. Little did I know, it was as simple as reaching out to him on Instagram. I offered to make him a guitar, and all he initially said was, "Let's do it." I started this build by using some birch and African mahogany to make a neck-through guitar. I don't know what it was in my mind that made me think this was a good idea, but I guess John seemed like a neck-through kind of person. I even went with incorporating black veneer to add depth and contrast. That all being said, I knew this guitar needed more, and it likely had to come in the form of cutoffs and scraps from John's shop, which was a 10-hour drive away. But if you saw my video where Sean and I drove over 30 hours one way to meet Cam at Blacktail Studio, 10 hours seemed like child's play. And there wasn't anything to stop us from seizing that opportunity.
Alright, I swear Sean doesn't drive all of these trips. I drive first, and he's driving now.
Don't believe me.
We're an hour and a half outside of John's place. Mr. Malecki, John the Builder. I just can't believe that it's the second big YouTuber I'm really admire, and now we're going to his shop. Now, I forgot my boots though, so we're gonna stop by Walmart and get some cheap ones.
All right, so first up, I've got this. So it's not outside, but this is the Corian and epoxy cutoff. This was from the House of the Dragon Game of Thrones table that we did. So you have a layer of 1/2-inch Corian, which you can see bonded to 2-inch thick epoxy on the backside here. That if you guys could do something with it, that'd be insane. I see your wheels are turning,
Oh, yeah, we could,
right?
Yeah. I think of a lot of things I could do with it right now.
So something also that came to mind when I was watching your guys' content, and we'll get to the wood, but you mentioned in the video with Cam that you were having some issues with a specific tool, and that you might be investing in another one. And when I was getting started, I was like all over Craigslist and stuff. So I was like buying all my tools used. It helped me move the needle, right? And it helped me grow my business, helped me get to where I am today. So we recently installed a bandsaw, and this one doesn't have a home.
What? You're fucking lying.
You mentioned that in the video. Now, I know it's snowing, I know it's terrible, but I want you guys to have this.
What? No way, man.
You drove 10 hours out here, and you're also building me a custom guitar.
What?
And so I thought there'd be no better home than another start our
Oh my God.
YouTube channel.
So yeah, that happened. Went out there for wood, came back with crazier material, a bandsaw, and even a new drill press. That meant I had to knock this guitar out of the park, and I felt this Corian and epoxy was perfect for the wings on the neck through. At least as a start. What you're seeing here is the first time I've ever used a proper sized bandsaw blade to cut curves on my bandsaw. Thanks to now having a bigger one for resawing. I just marked the cut areas with templates and went to town. Speaking of templates, if you've ever wanted to make your own guitar, I have full template kits available on my website. They include the body, neck pocket, pickup cavities, and even a 3-piece electronics cavity set. It's how I build most of my guitars, and they take all of the guesswork out of it. I initially was only going to make this neck through template for just this build, but after talking with Sean, we're now offering this set as well. The only difference is this guitar will be a hanging headless, and the template set on the website actually has a 3x3 headstock, which is much more versatile for most people. Anyways, I've never made a neck through guitar before, so it took a while to figure out an approach. Getting things flush was the easy part. Determining the right thickness was difficult at first because you have to consider how high the fretboard is above the body. So instead of surfacing the body around the fretboard, I decided to raise the fretboard. This was done by laminating black veneer and some guanacoste from John's Black Rifle Coffee Company table. I didn't know if this would work or not, so I was definitely gambling when I shouldn't have been. But it seemed like a much easier idea to raise the fretboard to a proper height that aligns with the bridge versus trying to make a perfect neck angle. That shit seemed too risky, and I've already failed the initial surprise idea I had for this, which was making this guitar a real-life flamethrower. Yeah, we'll circle back to that idea one day. For the top of the wings, I wanted to have a Game of Thrones feel similar to John's table, which meant adding some crazy grained wood to it.
But we just got these. I'm going to turn one of them into a bar. So, map a burl from my dining table. We've got some cutoffs from Betsy.
Can I ask you a question about the burl?
Sure.
Was that the same one you did to book match the legs?
Yes. You can have it.
Dude, it's stunning. One of the cool things about meeting John and his crew was that they were practically the same age and talked about a lot of nostalgic things. Things like life before cell phones, watching the internet come alive, the dial tone when logging into AOL, and even playing the Oregon Trail as kids. It's crazy to see how much the world has changed around us. I may start sounding like an old man, probably because I have my first kid on the way. But kids these days don't know how easy they have it. My mom used to listen to my phone calls with girlfriends in middle school, and I remember having the fear of God put in me when she'd hear the internet dial tone screeching across the house because I was taking a midnight trip to the spank bank on the family computer. LimeWire was the place where all computers eventually went to die, but not after we got our fair share of free content. After some milling and drum sanding, this is what I came up with. These wings are book matched, and I glued birch veneer to the bottoms to start the stabilizing process. In this case, the veneer is not only an aesthetic choice, it also acts as a less porous surface to adhere to the epoxy and Corian wings. The burl tops were so porous and dry that I was afraid they'd soak up most of the epoxy rather than properly cure to the wings, which is where my severe disdain for all things dry and burly began. This project required so much epoxy, and the burl made it take longer. John gave us like 6 gallons of slow cure epoxy to stabilize it, but it also meant I had to wait a week for each glue up, making this one of the longest builds I've ever done. While that was drying, I got back to the neck and glued on the multi-veneer fretboard riser thingy. This needed to be done before I routed a channel for the truss rod. Sean came over and started stabilizing this burl, which soaked up more epoxy than I initially thought was needed. By the end of it, these tops were more epoxy than wood. You know, for tone. And if you remember, it was a 1-week cure time, which meant I was 2 weeks into making just these wings by the time the stabilizer cured. The problem with all this time waiting on epoxy to cure is that I got bored. I do dangerous shit when I'm bored. At the minimum, I take stupid risks. So I decided to try a book-matched burl fretboard. This wood actually came from a 1,000-pound burl that Sean and I milled with a chainsaw in the bed of my truck. It was hyper curly and figured, but luckily dried to around 7% moisture content, and again, I had to wait for more epoxy to cure because I didn't want glue creep on this book match. Sean has feeble and feminine hands, so he had trouble cutting these frets. It was either his weak hands or the fact that this was the edge of the burl and was as dense as raw ebony. Now you can finally see why I wanted to use this for the fretboard. I'm probably one of the most, if not the most, impatient woodworker on the planet, and I was frustrated at this time. For you, it's only been like 11 minutes. For me, I was 3 weeks in and didn't even have a basic guitar shape yet. That being said, most guitar builds are not this painstaking and slow. I normally get a guitar completely finished in a couple weeks, and that's with a day job, which means you could do it too. I think the worst part for me was that it was going to another woodworker, and not just charity this time. In my mind, it was like Adam Sandler trying to sing in front of Mariah Carey. Entertaining? Absolutely. Good enough? Probably not. Because this epoxy glue up still didn't cure and it split down the middle. This was beyond unacceptable and needed a fix. So, in John's words, I had to get squirrely. I risked it all by routing a 1/8 inch channel down the middle before even deciding what to fill it with. But that could be determined later. You'll probably notice I do a lot of things off camera, or this video would be 4 hours long. I use a domino joiner to help keep everything aligned when gluing the wings to the neck. And by gluing, I meant waiting another week for the epoxy to dry. But I didn't think any other form of adhesive would work well when gluing wood, corian, and epoxy together. I've never worked with corian before, and it's definitely something unique, as you'll see after I start getting everything to a respectable shape. I made this little strip of Clara walnut I got from Cam at Blacktail Studio and glued black veneer to both sides to fill that squirrely gap in the fretboard. It took a while to get a perfect fit, but I really thought it would be a cool addition. Which leads me to a story about PRS, otherwise known as Paul Reed Smith. If you're not familiar, Paul Reed Smith is one of the most respected and renowned guitar makers in the world. I watched an interview with him where he talked about making a guitar for Carlos Santana for the first time. He had a similar issue where the glue line wasn't done well and needed to come up with a fix. So he routed a channel into the body and filled it similar with how I filled the fretboard channel. This created one of the most well-known artist guitars ever made, and it was done by accident, because he didn't have a good enough joiner. The whole point of me telling you that story is that mistakes happen, and sometimes the fix can be better than the original idea. In fact, most of my mistakes turn into happy accidents. You know, the Bob Ross of guitar builders. Back to more of not knowing what I'm doing and just risking it for the biscuit. This guitar is probably one of the heaviest things I've ever made due to the corian and epoxy. I was hoping that removing a lot of the neck would be a decent diet plan for this fat boy, but in the end, it was still as heavy as Thor's hammer. It was also sketchy as hell trying to do this cleanly. To start shaping the neck, I use this massive table edge router bit like I do in all my guitars. It's the perfect shape to get most of the work done without too much hand shaping afterwards. You just have to be careful not to cut into the truss rod by going too deep. When I was at John's, he mentioned I should start power carving. Well, the only tool I had for that is a Dremel, and let's just say it's a weak little bitch when shaping corian. but it was way better than rasping it by hand, which I later had to do to get this palm relief decent. This guitar isn't a true headless. It's a hanging headless with headstock wings that allow it to hang on a wall. John said this was going to be in his podcast studio and he wanted to hang it somewhere, so this was the solution. And I just absolutely love all the contrasting in colors and dimensions here. Now that we finally have a guitar shape, it was time to start knocking out all the quick stuff. And I'm lying, there was nothing quick about any of it. I just wasn't waiting on epoxy to dry anymore. I should probably mention John gave us some other cool stuff while we were there. If you haven't seen his shop shades eye protection, they're pretty dope. They came in handy here while Sean was routing the pickup cavities. Just look at all the wood in Sean's face. Long, short, and some weirdly shaped wood flying at his eyeballs, but the shop shades were a classy way to protect him from all the nonsense. In all seriousness, they're pretty nice, and I'll leave a link in the description for them if you're curious. I mentioned earlier that all of our guitar making router template kits come with a 3-piece electronics cavity set. This makes it easy to route out everything and have a perfect placement for magnets or fasteners and get you a perfect fit for your lid. I didn't want to disrupt the Corian back face, so I milled down some more to make a matching lid. It was as easy as cutting the outside of the template line and flush trimming it. You'll see what it looks like later. I can't give you all the goodies yet. Just know it turned out pretty sick. I know this channel is named The Wooden Hobbyist, but our guitars are officially Scarlett guitars. Some people mentioned they'd like to see some logos on headstocks, so I had these brass medallions made. The Scarlett Guitars logo is a scarlet ibis bird. It's an ugly bird, but makes for a cool logo. And instead of using CA glue or waiting a week for epoxy, I just used quick curing JB weld, which means this thing is never going to fall out. I know I'm missing out on the opportunity to say, let us spray here and add a high gloss spray finish, but in a minute you'll see why I absolutely had no time to set up a spray booth and polish it up through the grits. Instead, I'm using Walrus oil furniture butter here, and later I buffed it up to 2000 grit. I love this stuff and it's super easy to apply. They don't sponsor me, by the way, but they should if they're watching. I think I have an addiction to black and gold because I've only used gold frets since I've started building. There's something so classy about the brass or gold color up against dark wood. I'm curious on your thoughts. Do you like gold or chrome colored frets, especially against dark wood? Anyways, I mentioned there was a reason for not spraying the guitar, and I've actually been holding out on this surprise this entire video for those that kept watching. I'm actually building 2 more guitars. Another for John, and one for one of you. They're going to have John's cottonwood burl tops and guanacost bodies from the Black Rifle Coffee Company table. I really enjoy doing these giveaways because it gives the opportunity for someone to enjoy what I build. That being said, Giving away guitars isn't cheap, and I'm nowhere near able to afford doing this forever. So to combat that, we have a membership on the channel where members get an additional 100 entries into each giveaway. If you don't want to be a member but still want to enter for free, I'll leave a link below to the website which will show you how to do it. Anyways, these guitars are going to be more traditional with a bolt-on neck, and they're going to be the first of our newest PR Scarlett design. They're essentially PRS double-cut horns with the signature Scarlett guitar lower cutaway, which makes sitting and playing super comfortable. For the necks, we're getting a little crazy with wenge, birch, padauk, and a bacote fretboard. This color combination was sure to make for a crazy lamination. It just took a few hours of milling, resawing strip after strip after strip before moving these things around to find the best layout. After everything was milled and glued up, this is the combination we went with. The bold orangish red strip down the middle really made it stand out. I've been looking for more exotic and colored woods to work with, and I'm curious if any of you have any recommendations on crazy colored wood that would look good in a guitar. Anything you haven't seen before? Let me know in the comments. I've been working extremely hard to build this brand recently. I'm traveling over the country on a whim, investing every last dollar I have available, and working on this non-stop when I'm not at my day job. That includes trying to come up with ideas for products that I can make for subscribers. I've recently came out with some new hoodies and t-shirts that kind of toe the line of offensive but funny. I've also designed my very own guitar pick shape that has a bunch of funny and cool engravings on them. These shield picks are made to order, they're funny, and actually playable on all three corners. The engravings add a texture that make them easier to hold as well. I'll leave a link in the description for anyone interested in supporting the channel. For the fret inlays, I wanted to have an original, out-of-the-box style that still felt classic. I used this brass rod to act as a ring of sorts. After it's hammered and glued into place, I filled the ring with white flocking powder and thin CA glue. This gave it a white, glossy texture that wasn't just regular inlay material, and it took forever to pack each and every one of these to the rim. I've been asked a lot about what tools people should get to start making guitars, and I always want to just say all of them. You should get all of the tools. But I know it's not that easy. There are so many different ways to build a guitar, and if I were to truly recommend tools to build the way I do, it would be every sort of sander possible and a good trim router with a collection of quality pattern and flush trim bits. Those two are key, especially the sanders. The spindle sander creates a perfect headstock transition and cleans up the edges of guitar bodies flawlessly. The next would be a router table. I'm really inspired by Barlow guitars and add chamfers wherever I can, especially on a headstock. This is made easy on a router table, and just look how pretty it is. Side note, I know how lucky I am to be able to work with these huge YouTubers. John and his crew are some of the coolest people I've met, and they were so welcoming and kind to Sean and I. I'm also lucky to have a wife that lets me travel and supports me trying to build this business. I really want to continue carrying on the legacy of YouTube woodworkers and making guitars inspired by them. If there is any woodworker you'd like to see me collaborate with for another giveaway guitar, tag them in the comments. Maybe even a guitar player. And I know this sounds cheesy, but I think it would be super dope to make a guitar for Post Malone. Love him or hate him, I want to make a guitar for him. If anything, that's the biggest support I could receive from anyone watching. Liking the video and tagging some creators you'd love to see a collaboration with. You miss every shot you don't take, and regardless, I'm grateful you've watched this far, and I hope I've earned your subscription. There comes a time in every woodworker's life where you just make a big, stupid mistake. Ruining an entire project just because you didn't pay attention to an obvious detail. A detail as simple as making sure your router bit cutter head was below your template to avoid cutting through the template and add an irreplaceable damaged part to your workpiece. Yeah, ask me how I know. Sometimes you just gotta lean into these mistakes and make them stand out rather than try to hide them. So that's what I did here with the leftover scraps from the neck. It seemed to be the quickest, easiest, and likely prettiest option to fix this issue. Just remember that story about Paul Reed Smith before you judge me. Anyways, I skipped over it, but I took another few weeks to soak up these tops with epoxy as well. The burl was so dry and probably wasn't strong enough to support the 160 pounds of string force needed. It definitely wasn't going to hold the screws in either. I know the bandsaw was an awesome gift from John, but this drill press really made my day. I normally recess this input jack hole with a router and sketchy jig, so this was super awesome to just be able to have a few extra inches to fit this under a drill press instead. A few extra inches is always awesome. If you've made it this far, you're probably noticing I don't really care about the tonewood myth in electric guitars. And you probably also notice I like my guitars to look a bit different, and that's why I love doing it. There's not a guitar in this world I could buy that would be more satisfying than making what I want most. It makes me curious though. If you could have any guitar in the world, what would it be? I'm talking unicorn status. Any brand, any wood, any material, any string set, bridge, you name it. I'm curious what you would like. I've always had a deep love for a quilted maple top that's dyed blue with all gold hardware. It's just classy to me, I guess. The ultimate guitar to me would honestly be the one I'd never have to do fretwork on. Fretwork has become my absolute least favorite part of this process. It's an art form that I personally suck at. It takes a lot of patience and repetition, which are the two things I hate most in building anything. But they're also the two things that make you good at something. Luckily, FretLaser reached out and offered me their Fretwork kit to try out on the channel. They were going to sponsor me, but I haven't heard back from them. Regardless, it comes with a plethora of fine grit sandpaper, a string action ruler thing, and this super cool little handle to wrap the sandpaper around. The handle has a notch in the bottom that allows for sanding around the entire fret at one time, and it holds the sandpaper into place with a rubber band. Hand sanding and polishing frets can be a pain on your fingers, especially when doing it for more than one guitar. This set definitely helped speed up the process and got the frets ready for a Dremel polish in no time. If you find yourself doing fretwork, I definitely recommend this product. It was time to spit shine these things up with the super creamy Walrus oil furniture butter again. The grain really popped out and I had trouble deciding which guitar I liked more. I'll be showing some beauty shots soon and I'd definitely like to hear about which one you'd prefer. The neck through is awesome because it feels and looks like a weapon, a true battle axe. The PR Scarlett feels like it would look good on the wall in any bourbon room, and I just can't decide. The final step was to turn some knobs for these. I wanted to tie in the wood choice from the neck to the body. So Sean and I went to town on these Wingay and Bacote cubes. They turned out a little tall, but in the end, I think they kind of looked like burning cigar ends, which ties perfectly into the bourbon room feel.
That's good.
I had one more idea to personalize John's guitars with the Corian, and then it was back to Pennsylvania to surprise him. As I walked into his shop before he got there, I messaged him and I told him I was shipping the guitars out that day. His crew was nice enough to help me make this happen. This is John's actual reaction.
How was it? What's your deal?
Who's here?
How was the meeting, dummy?
Meeting was good. Who was here?
I don't know, you gotta go see.
What are you talking about?
You get your shop shades?
Sam broke shit?
You have to just stay calm. We thought it would be good for the footage. Just keep in mind, before you see what you're about to see, everything in this world is fixable, everything can be repaired. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's on the other side. Just stick with me. We're gonna get through it together. I fixed the table saw. I can fix anything. So just remain calm. Oh shit! You fucker! I thought you were fucking shipping it.
Needless to say, he loved them. John, thank you for the opportunity, and if any of you want to win the third guitar, check out the description. A full sound test video is available on the members-only videos as well.
Copyright, bring it!